Silent rebellion. The Blackwood estate sprawled across 20 acres of pristine California coastline, a monument to technological innovation and wealth. Within its walls, 17-year-old Vivian Blackwood paced her bedroom like a caged panther, dark eyes fixed on the message from her father. "Another tutor?" she muttered, deleting the text without responding. Her father, Winston Blackwood, founder of Quantum Nexus and the 12th richest man in the world, believed every problem could be solved with money, including her. Vivian glanced at the wall where faint shadows marked the spaces where her artwork once hung. She'd removed everything after her mother left 6 months ago, taking nothing but her new husband and leaving Vivian behind like forgotten luggage. 3 sharp knocks interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Blackwood." Mrs. Hoffman, the household manager, called through the door. "Your father insists you come downstairs to meet Mr. Rivera. Tell him I'm busy dying of boredom," Vivian replied, flopping onto her bed. "He said to remind you that this is your last chance before boarding school in Switzerland." Vivian rolled her eyes but stood up. Her father's threats were never empty. She examined her reflection. Ripped black jeans, vintage band t-shirt, hair dyed midnight blue, and smiled grimly. "Let's see how long this one lasts." Downstairs, Dominic Rivera waited in the sunlit library, examining the impressive collection, with genuine interest. At 26, he was younger than the previous tutors, with warm brown skin, intelligent eyes, and a small scar above his right eyebrow. His clothes were neat, but obviously worn, nothing like the polished professionals who usually pass through these doors. "Mr. Rivera," Winston Blackwood said, entering with his daughter trailing sullenly behind. "This is Vivienne." Dominic turned, offering a smile that didn't falter when met with Vivienne's cold stare. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Likewise," she replied with artificial sweetness. "Though I should warn you, the last tutor lasted 4 days before having a nervous breakdown." Winston's jaw tightened. "Vivian?" "It's all right," Dominic interrupted calmly. "I appreciate honesty." "I'll leave you to get acquainted," Winston said, checking his watch. "I have a board meeting. Mrs. Hoffman will show you to the guest house. Mr. Rivera." After Winston left, silence filled the room. Vivian dropped into an armchair, pulling out her phone. "So," Dominic said, sitting across from her, "your father mentioned you're brilliant but unmotivated." "My father mentions a lot of things," Vivian replied without looking up. "Usually while on conference calls to Tokyo." Dominic nodded. "What would you say about yourself?" This made her glance up. "Excuse me? If you were describing yourself, not your father's version of you, what would you say?" Vivian studied him suspiciously. "I'd say I'm counting the days until I turn 18 and can disappear." "Fair enough," Dominic said. "I was counting days, too, at your age." "Until what? You could become a glorified babysitter?" Something flickered across his face. Not anger, but recognition. "Until I could help my grandfather get the care he needed." He stood examining a chess set on a side table. "Your father hired me to prepare you for the International Baccalaureate. 6 subjects, including your native language literature, which I understand you're failing despite being fluent." "I'm not failing," Vivienne corrected. "I'm refusing to participate. There's a difference." "Semantics," Dominic said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Languages are my specialty. I have a PhD in comparative literature and linguistics." "Congratulations," Vivian drawled. "Why aren't you at a university instead of here?" "Academia isn't always meritocratic," he replied simply. "Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Like ending up in Billionaire prison teaching a lost cause?" Dominic considered her. "I don't see a lost cause. I see someone fighting a war no one else can see." This caught Vivian off guard, and for a moment her carefully constructed wall wavered. "I don't need saving," she said finally. Good, Dominic replied, because I'm not here to save you. I'm here to teach you how language shapes reality and how to use that power. Vivian's phone chimed with a text from her father. Behave. Last chance. She looked up at Dominic, who waited patiently, neither demanding nor pleading for her cooperation. Unlike the others, he didn't seem intimidated by the mansion, her father's name, or her hostility. Fine, she said, but I have conditions. I'm listening. No reports to my father beyond the basics, no psychoanalyzing me, and no pretending you care about my potential. Dominic nodded. Agreed. And I have one condition, too. What's that? Honesty, he said, even when it's uncomfortable. Vivian considered him for a long moment before extending her hand. Deal. As they shook hands, neither realized they had just set in motion a journey that would change both their lives forever. Fractured notes. 2 weeks had passed, and to everyone's surprise, Dominic Rivera was still employed at the Blackwood estate. Even more surprising was that Vivian had actually completed her assignments, albeit with cutting commentary in the high margins. The library had become their regular meeting place, its tall windows casting golden rectangles across the antique desk where they worked. Today, Dominic arrived to find Vivian already there, headphones on, scribbling furiously in a leather-bound journal. He waited until she noticed him before speaking. Good morning. Vivian removed her headphones. Is it? The sky looks like watered-down coffee. An apt simile, Dominic said, placing a stack of books on the desk. Have you finished Marquez? Yes, she replied. It was less terrible than I expected. Dominic smiled. This was high praise coming from Vivian. And your analysis? She slid a folder toward him. The magical realism serves as a metaphor for the political reality of Colombia. Conventional language couldn't capture the absurdity of actual events. Dominic skimmed her essay, impressed by the depth of her insights. This is university-level work. Vivian shrugged, but he caught the flicker of pride in her eyes before she masked it. What were you writing when I came in? He asked. Her posture stiffened. Nothing important. It looked important. Vivian hesitated, then pushed the journal toward him. Song lyrics, stupid hobby. Dominic read the page, his expression thoughtful. The lyrics were raw and powerful, full of imagery about silenced voices. And invisible cages. This isn't stupid, he said quietly. This is poetry. Whatever. She snatched the journal back. Can we just focus on the assignment? Dominic nodded, but instead of opening the textbook, he asked, Do you play any instruments? Piano, she admitted reluctantly. And guitar? Why? Because music and literature are siblings. They both tell stories through carefully structured patterns. He gestured to the grand piano gathering dust in the corner. Would you play something? Vivian looked at him suspiciously. This isn't in the curriculum. Consider it an alternative assessment of narrative structure. After a moment of deliberation, she walked to the piano and sat down. Her fingers hovered over the keys before beginning a haunting melody that filled the library with emotion she never allowed in her words. Dominic listened, watching as her rigid posture softened, her face transformed. When she finished, silence hung in the air like a held breath. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, he identified softly. Beautiful interpretation. Vivian quickly stood up, uncomfortable with the vulnerability she'd shown. My mother taught me, before she decided her life was better without us in it. Dominic didn't offer empty consolations. Instead, he said, Music stays when people leave. That's its power. Is that supposed to be comforting? Her voice had an edge, but it wasn't as sharp as usual. No, he replied honestly. Just true. Their lesson continued, but something had shifted. A tiny crack had appeared in the wall between them. Later that afternoon, Dominic sat in the modest guest house, surrounded by medical bills. His grandfather's. Parkinson's treatments were becoming more expensive, and the nursing facility had called that morning about an overdue payment. His tutor salary was generous, but between past debts and current needs, it wasn't enough. His phone rang. Professor Harding from Berkeley, where Dominic had been an adjunct before taking this position. Dominic! Good news! The department might have a full-time position opening next semester. Nothing guaranteed, but I wanted you to know. Hope flared in his chest. A university position would mean stability, benefits, a chance to publish his research. Everything he'd worked toward. Thank you, Professor. That means a lot. How's the private tutoring going? Still with that tech billionaires kid? Dominic looked at the piano composition he'd been studying, one of Vivian's original pieces she'd reluctantly shared. It's unexpectedly rewarding. After the call, Dominic walked to the main house for dinner, another of Winston's conditions. The household staff ate together at 6, while the Blackwoods dined separately at 8. Tonight, however, Mrs. Hoffman informed him that Winston was away on business. "Miss Vivienne has requested dinner in her studio," she said with a significant look. "She asked if you would join her." The studio turned out to be a converted attic space filled with musical instruments, recording equipment, and canvases splattered. With bold colors, Vivian sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by takeout containers. "Mrs. Hoffman said you wanted company," Dominic said, hovering in the doorway. "Don't make it weird," Vivian replied, pushing a container toward him. "I ordered too much Thai food." Dominic sat down, accepting the offered chopsticks. "Thanks." They ate in companionable silence until Vivian spoke. "I found your dissertation online, The Language of Resistance, Linguistic Subversion in Underground Literature." Dominic nearly choked on his pad thai. "You did?" "It was actually interesting," she admitted. "Especially the part about how marginalized communities create linguistic codes to communicate under oppression." "That was my grandfather's influence," Dominic said. "He fled Nicaragua during the revolution. He taught me that words can be weapons or shields." "Is he the reason you became a linguist?" Dominic nodded. "He raised me after my parents died. Used to say that understanding language means understanding people." "Is he still alive?" Vivian asked. "Yes, though his health is declining." Dominic's expression clouded. "Parkinson's." Vivian absorbed this information silently. Then, unexpectedly, she stood and walked to a guitar in the corner. "I wrote something based on that Garcia Marquez book. Want to hear it?" Dominic recognized the offering for what it was, a bridge extended. "Very much." As her music filled the room, Dominic realized he was witnessing something few ever saw: Vivian Blackwood without her armor. Her song captured the novel's themes, of isolation and forbidden love, with a depth that startled him. When she finished, their eyes met, and for a brief moment, they were not tutor and student, not employee and heiress, just two souls, recognizing something familiar in each other. The spell broke when Vivian's phone buzzed with her father's nightly check-in text. Her walls instantly reassembled. "I should get some work done," she said, setting the guitar aside. Dominic stood. "Thank you for dinner. And the music." At the door, he paused. "Vivian, your lyrics aren't just good, they're important. Don't stop writing them." After he left, Vivian sat alone, staring at the door. For the first time in months, she picked up her journal and began to write without restraint, words flowing like the music they'd shared. Downstairs, Dominic checked his phone to find another message from the nursing facility. His grandfather needed additional care that required money Dominic didn't have. The potential university position was months away if it materialized at all. He looked back toward the attic where faint music could still be heard. Whatever connection they'd formed tonight was dangerous for both of them. He needed this job, and she needed someone who saw her clearly. The line between them had to remain uncrossed. But as he walked back to the guest house under a sky now filled with stars, Dominic wondered if some boundaries were already blurring beyond his control. Unexpected harmony. The call came at 3:17 a.m. Dominic fumbled for his phone in the darkness, instantly alert when he saw the nursing facility's number. "Mr. Rivera, it's Nurse Patel. Your grandfather has had a fall. He's stable, but—" 20 minutes later, Dominic was speeding toward San Francisco in his aging Honda, the pre-dawn highway nearly empty. His mind raced faster than his car. His grandfather was his only family, the man who had taught him to read poetry before he could tie his shoes. At the facility, the fluorescent lights cast a sickly glow over everything. His grandfather once, a towering figure of strength, looked small in the hospital bed, a butterfly bandage across his forehead. "Abuelo," Dominic whispered, taking his weathered hand. Emilio Rivera's eyes fluttered open, recognition slowly dawning. "Dominic, what are you doing here? It's the middle of the night." "You fell," Dominic said gently. "Do you remember?" The old man frowned. "I was trying to reach my book. The nurses, they mean well, but they put everything too far away." Dr. Winters arrived with clipboard in hand and a serious expression. "Mr. Rivera, may I speak with you privately?" In the hallway, the doctor didn't mince words. "Your grandfather needs more specialized care. His Parkinson's is progressing, and this fall could have been much worse. We recommend transferring him to Golden Oaks. They have a neurological specialty wing." "Golden Oaks," Dominic repeated, recognizing the name of the most expensive care facility in the Bay Area. "Doctor, I can barely afford this place." Dr. Winters' expression softened. "There are payment plans, possibly some assistance programs. I'll figure something out," Dominic interrupted. "He deserves the best care." When he returned to his grandfather's room, Emilio was dozing. Dominic sat beside him, calculating figures in his head that refused to add up to anything but impossible. Dawn was breaking when he finally left, promising to return that evening. He drove back to the Blackwood estate in a daze, arriving just as the household was stirring to life. Mrs. Hoffman took one look at his face and pressed a cup of coffee into his hands. "Everything all right, Mr. Rivera?" "Family emergency," he said. "My grandfather fell. He's stable, but—" "Take the day off," she suggested. "I'm sure Miss Vivian can—" "No," Dominic said firmly. "I need this job. I'll be fine." But when Vivian arrived in the library, she immediately noticed his disheveled appearance. "You look terrible." "Thank you for that assessment," he replied, attempting a smile. "Seriously, what's wrong? You've got that same look my dad gets when stocks are crashing." Dominic hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My grandfather is in the hospital. He fell last night." Vivian's cavalier expression softened. "Is he going to be okay?" "Yes, but he needs more care than I can currently afford." Dominic straightened his posture. "Let's focus on your comparative essay." "We don't have to do this today," Vivian said, surprising both of them. "Education doesn't stop for personal problems," he replied, echoing something his grandfather often said. Vivian studied him, then nodded. "Okay, but we're doing it my way." She grabbed her backpack. "Come on." "Where are we going?" "Out." "I can't think in here today." 20 minutes later, they sat at a small table in a coffee shop in town, far from the mansion's oppressive grandeur. Vivian ordered complicated espresso drinks for them both, then pulled out her laptop. "So, comparative essay. I've chosen to analyze linguistic rebellion in dystopian literature versus real-world political resistance movements." Dominic blinked, impressed. "That's ambitious." "Inspired by your dissertation," she admitted, "though I'm focusing on how language becomes a tool for maintaining identity under systemic oppression." For the next hour, they discussed her thesis, arguing points and refining ideas. Dominic found himself fully engaged, momentarily forgetting his troubles as they debated the power of reclaimed slurs in marginalized communities. When Vivian went to order more coffee, Dominic's phone rang. The nursing facility administrator calling about payment options for Golden Oaks. The figure she quoted made his stomach drop. "I understand," he said quietly. "I'll need some time to figure this out." When he hung up, Vivienne was watching him, having returned unnoticed. "That bad, huh?" Dominic rubbed his eyes. "Just complicated. Money problems usually are," she said knowingly. "Is that why you're tutoring instead of teaching at a university?" "Partly," he admitted. "Academia moves slowly. My grandfather's Parkinson's doesn't." Vivienne was quiet for a moment. "You could ask my father for an advance. He's basically made of money." "I couldn't do that." "Why not? He pays people to solve his problems all the time." "Because some things shouldn't be solved with money," Dominic said firmly. "Some things require sacrifice and hard work." "That's stupid," Vivienne retorted. "If you have a resource, use it." "It's not stupid to want to stand on your own merits," he countered. "Your father's wealth is his, not mine." "So you'd rather your grandfather suffer because of your pride?" Dominic's expression hardened. "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair," Vivian shot back. "That's the first lesson rich people learn." They stared at each other across the table, an unexpected tension crackling between them. "I'm sorry," Vivienne said suddenly. "That was out of line." Dominic nodded, accepting her apology. "Let's head back." They drove in silence until Vivian spoke again. "Can I meet him? Your grandfather?" The question caught Dominic off guard. "Why?" "Because he matters to you," she said simply. "And I'm curious about the man who raised someone so," she gestured vaguely, "principled." That evening, after checking with his grandfather, Dominic found himself driving Vivian to the facility. He'd expected her to be uncomfortable in such a setting, but she moved through the corridors with surprising ease, unaffected by the sights and smells that often disturbed visitors. Emilio's face lit up when they entered. "Ah, you must be the brilliant student my grandson keeps talking about." Vivian glanced at Dominic, who shrugged sheepishly. "I'm Vivienne," she said, shaking Emilio's hand. "Your grandson is the most stubborn teacher I've ever had." Emilio laughed. "He gets that from his mother. Please, sit." For the next hour, Dominic watched in amazement as his grandfather and Vivienne conversed like old friends. Emilio shared stories of revolutionary poets in Nicaragua, while Vivienne asked questions that revealed genuine interest. When she mentioned her music, Emilio insisted on hearing a recording on her phone. "You have a gift," he told her afterward. "Music speaks what words cannot." "That's what Dominic said about literature," she replied. "Because he was paying attention when I taught him," Emilio said proudly. "Words and music, both are how we make sense of an incomprehensible world." When visiting hours ended, Vivian excused herself to use the restroom, leaving Dominic alone with his grandfather. "She is not what I expected," Emilio said. "What did you expect?" "From how you described her? A spoiled princess? But I see something else. A young woman carrying old pain." Dominic nodded. "She's surprising." "Be careful, Nieto," Emilio warned gently. "The heart doesn't recognize boundaries of class or circumstance." "It's not like that," Dominic protested. "I'm her teacher." Emilio smiled knowingly but said nothing more. On the drive back, Vivienne was unusually quiet, staring out the window at the passing city lights. "Thank you for coming," Dominic said, finally. It meant a lot to him. "He's amazing," she replied softly. "The way he talks about language and revolution, I can see why you became who you are." When they arrived at the estate, Vivian paused before getting out of the car. Your grandfather deserves golden oaks, she said firmly, and you deserve that university position. Before Dominic could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the mansion like a ghost. The next morning, Dominic received a call from Golden Oaks. Mr. Rivera, we're pleased to inform you that your grandfather has been accepted into our specialized care program. His transfer has been arranged for next week. There must be some mistake, Dominic said, confused. I haven't completed any paperwork or made any payments. Everything has been taken care of, the administrator replied. An anonymous donor has covered all expenses for the next year. Dominic stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. He knew exactly who the anonymous donor was. In the library, Vivian sat waiting for their lesson, casually flipping through a book as if nothing had changed. But when their eyes met, Dominic saw something new there, not pity or charity, but a quiet understanding. Vivian, he began, did you— I have no idea what you're talking about, she interrupted, but a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Now, are we going to discuss James Baldwin today or what? And in that moment, Dominic realized that the wall between them hadn't just cracked, it had begun to crumble entirely. Dissonant worlds. The change in Vivienne was subtle at first, a softening around the edges, moments of genuine laughter, assignments completed with care rather than contempt. The household staff exchanged curious glances when she said, "Please," and "thank you," wondering if an imposter had replaced the girl who once threw a teacup at a maid for interrupting her. For 6 weeks, Dominic had watched this transformation unfold, pride mingling with an emotion he refused to name. His grandfather was thriving at Golden Oaks, his symptoms better managed with the specialized care. Dominic visited him every Sunday, and twice Vivian had accompanied him, bringing books of Nicaraguan poetry she'd specially ordered. Today, they sat beneath an oak tree on the estate grounds, discussing Virginia Woolf's stream of consciousness technique. Vivian lay on her stomach on a blanket, chin propped on her hands, the dappled sunlight playing across her face. Her blue hair had grown out, revealing its natural chestnut color at the roots. So basically, she was saying, Woolf is rejecting linear narrative because life itself isn't linear. Our thoughts don't happen in neat chronological order. Exactly, Dominic replied. She's trying to capture the authentic human experience, messy, interconnected, constantly shifting between past and present. Like memory, Vivian mused. It's never just one clean story. It's fragments and feelings all jumbled together. She plucked a blade of grass, twirling it between her fingers. I've been thinking about applying to study literature. Maybe at Berkeley. Dominic tried to hide his surprise. I thought you were set on business school. That's my father's plan, she said, rolling onto her back to stare up at the leaves, but I'm not sure it's mine anymore. Before Dominic could respond, Mrs. Hoffman appeared at the edge of the lawn. Mr. Rivera, Mr. Blackwood would like to see you. Immediately. The walk to Winston's home office felt interminable. Dominic had met with him only twice before, once for his initial interview and once for a brief progress report. Both times, Winston had been distracted, half listening while answering emails. Today, Winston Blackwood sat fully focused behind his massive desk, eyes cold as he gestured for Dominic to sit. Mr. Rivera, he began without preamble, when I hired you, I expected professionalism. Dominic sat straighter. Sir? Winston pushed a tablet across the desk. On the screen was a photo of Dominic and Vivienne at the coffee shop, heads bent close together over a book, both laughing. The angle suggested it was taken without their knowledge. My security team monitors Vivian's movements, Winston explained. Imagine my surprise when I discovered these outings. We've been studying in different environments, Dominic said carefully. It helps with engagement. And this? Winston swiped to another photo, Dominic and Vivienne entering the nursing facility together. Is this also educational? Dominic's jaw tightened. Vivienne expressed interest in meeting my grandfather. It was a brief visit. Let me be clear, Winston said, leaning forward. You are her tutor, not her friend, certainly not anything more. I'm aware of my position, Mr. Blackwood. Are you? Winston stood, pacing to the window. Because Golden Oaks is an exceptionally expensive facility. One might wonder how a tutor affords such care. Dominic felt his blood run cold. My grandfather's care is my concern. It becomes my concern when my daughter makes a substantial withdrawal from her trust fund, her first ever, the day before your grandfather is miraculously admitted to Golden Oaks. Shame and anger warred within Dominic. I didn't ask for her help. Yet you accepted it, Winston noted coldly. I've seen this before, Mr. Rivera. Young men captivated by wealth, using my daughter to access it. Dominic stood abruptly. With all due respect, sir, you don't know me, and you clearly don't know your daughter either. Winston's expression hardened. I know that before you arrived, Vivienne was focused on her future. Now she's talking about changing her college plans, writing music instead of preparing for the real world. Maybe she's discovering who she really is, Dominic countered. Maybe she's more than just your heir. Careful, Mr. Rivera, Winston warned. You're easily replaced. Like her mother was? The words escaped before Dominic could stop them. Silence fell, heavy and dangerous. Winston's face had gone white with anger. You're fired, he said quietly. Pack your things and be gone by morning. What about Vivienne's education? I'll find someone more suitable, Winston replied. Someone who understands boundaries. As Dominic turned to leave, Winston added, One more thing. The anonymous donation to Golden Oaks will be discontinued. Consider it the cost of overstepping. Dominic froze, his hand on the doorknob. You would punish my grandfather because you're angry with me? I'm simply correcting an inappropriate financial entanglement, Winston said smoothly. Of course, if you wish to make other arrangements for his care, that's your prerogative. Dominic said nothing more, knowing any words would only make things worse. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. How would he tell his grandfather? How could he possibly afford Golden Oaks on his own? His phone buzzed with a text from Professor Harding. Position officially opening. Interview committee meets next week. You're top of my list. A lifeline, but one that might come too late. Back in the guest house, Dominic began packing mechanically, his mind racing through options, none of them good. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Vivienne stood there, her face a storm of emotions. Tell me it's not true. Your father fired me, Dominic confirmed. Why? What happened? He believes I've been a negative influence. Dominic couldn't bring himself to mention the money or the threats against his grandfather. That's ridiculous. You're the only teacher who's ever actually taught me anything. She paced the small room. I'll talk to him. He can't do this. Vivienne, Dominic said gently. He can. It's his house, his money. So what? We'll find another way. You can teach somewhere else. I can come to you for lessons. It's not that simple. Why not? She demanded. Because your father is right about one thing. I am your tutor. That's a professional relationship with boundaries. Is that all this is to you? Her voice had gone dangerously quiet. A job? Dominic looked at her. This brilliant, complicated, young woman who had somehow broken through his carefully constructed walls. No, he admitted. It's not just a job. That's the problem. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You care about me. Vivienne. And I care about you. she continued, stepping closer. Why is that so wrong? You're 17. I'm your teacher. There are a dozen reasons this can't happen. I'll be 18 in 2 months, she argued, and you won't be my teacher anymore. Tell me you don't feel something for me. What I feel doesn't matter, Dominic said firmly. What matters is doing what's right. What's right is being honest, she insisted. What's right is not letting my father control everything with his money and power. Speaking of which, Dominic said carefully, the donation to Golden Oaks was the least I could do, she finished. After everything you've done for me. Your father knows. He's discontinuing it. Vivian's face paled. What? He can't do that. It's my trust fund. Apparently he can, Dominic said wearily. And he will, unless what? Unless we end whatever this is between us. Vivian stared at him, betrayal written across her face. So that's it? He threatens your grandfather and you just give up? I'm trying to be realistic, Dominic said. Your father has all the power here. Only if we let him, she cried. Don't you see? This is exactly what he does. Uses money to control everyone around him. It's why my mother left. It's why I've been so angry. Vivian, no, she cut him off. I thought you were different. I thought you understood that some things are worth fighting for. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You taught me to find my voice, to stand up for what I believe in. I guess I learned the lesson better than you did. After she left, Dominic sat on the edge of the bed, her words echoing in his mind. She was right. He had given up too easily, let fear overpower principle. But what choice did he have? His grandfather needed that care. His phone rang, Emilio calling for their nightly check-in. Hola, abuelo, Dominic answered, trying to keep his voice steady. Something is wrong, Emilio said immediately. I can hear it. Dominic sighed, then told his grandfather everything. The firing, Winston's threats, Vivian's anger. This man would use an old man's health as leverage? Emilio sounded more outraged than afraid. No, Dominic. You cannot let him do this. I don't have a choice, abuelo. Your health. My health is not worth your integrity, Emilio interrupted firmly. I have lived my life. You are still writing yours. Do not let fear of what might happen stop you from doing what is right. And what is right? Dominic asked, genuinely lost. That, Nieto, is something you must decide for yourself, Emilio replied gently. But remember what I taught you about courage. It isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. After they hung up, Dominic walked to the window. Across the manicured lawn, lights blazed in the mansion. Somewhere inside, Vivian was fighting her own battle. He had told her once that language shapes reality. Now he needed to decide what story his actions would tell, one of surrender or one of courage. With sudden clarity, Dominic knew what he had to do. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Professor Harding? It's Dominic Rivera. About that position. I'd like to propose something different. Perfect cadence. The Berkeley Arts Center buzzed with anticipation. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and sitting cross-legged in the aisles. At the back, Dominic nervously adjusted his tie, scanning the crowd. Relax, Professor Harding said beside him. Tonight is already a success. Dominic nodded, though his eyes continued searching. 3 months had passed since he'd left the Blackwood estate. 3 months of rebuilding, reinventing, and remembering what truly mattered. The lights dimmed, and Professor Harding took the stage. Welcome to the inaugural Voices Unbound event, a celebration of linguistic expression across cultures and experiences. This program was the vision of our newest faculty member, Professor Dominic Rivera, who believes that language is not just how we communicate, it's how we transform. Applause filled the room as Dominic moved to the microphone. Thank you all for coming. Tonight we'll hear from poets, musicians, and storytellers from diverse backgrounds, people who use language to cross boundaries and build bridges. All proceeds will support scholarships for first-generation college students. As he spoke, the door at the back of the auditorium opened. Dominic's heart skipped when he saw his grandfather enter in his wheelchair, accompanied by a nursing aide from the modest facility where he now lived. They had weathered the transition from Golden Oaks together, finding ways to make it work, one day at a time. But Emilio wasn't alone. Behind him stood Winston Blackwood, looking uncomfortably out of place in the bohemian setting. Dominic maintained his composure, continuing his introduction as planned. Our first performer tonight uses music and poetry to explore themes of identity and expectation. Please welcome Vivian Reed. The audience applauded as a young woman with chestnut hair walked onto the stage, carrying an acoustic guitar. Gone was the rebellious blue hair and dark clothing. Instead, Vivian wore a simple dress, her face bare of makeup, looking both younger and somehow more mature than before. Their eyes met briefly before she took her position at the microphone. This piece is called Fractured Notes. It's about finding your voice when others are trying to write your story. As her fingers moved across the guitar strings, her voice filled the space. Clear, confident, and hauntingly beautiful. The lyrics spoke of invisible cages and unexpected freedom, of learning to see beyond golden walls to the vastness beyond. When she finished, the audience erupted in applause, many rising to their feet. Dominic watched her bow, pride swelling in his chest. In the weeks after his departure, he'd heard nothing from her. Then, a letter arrived, not an email or text, but an actual letter written on expensive stationery. I've decided to attend Berkeley instead of Harvard Business School. I've changed my name. My mother's maiden name suits me better. I'll be studying comparative literature. Maybe our paths will cross again. She'd signed it simply V. The rest of the evening unfolded beautifully, with performances ranging from slam poetry to multilingual storytelling. At the reception afterward, Dominic found himself surrounded by colleagues and students discussing plans to expand the program. Professor Rivera, Winston Blackwood's voice cut through the chatter. May I have a word? They moved to a quiet corner, tension hanging between them. That was quite an event, Winston said, studying his champagne flute. Not what I expected. What did you expect, Mr. Blackwood? Something less impactful. Winston's expression was unreadable. Vivian told me you refused the money. After leaving the Blackwood estate, Dominic had received a certified check for an amount that would have covered his grandfather's care at Golden Oaks for years. He'd returned it the same day with a simple note. Some things can't be bought. It wasn't mine to take, Dominic replied. Winston nodded slowly. She also informed me, quite forcefully, that she's changing her major, her name, and her relationship with me. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Winston asked sharply. You changed her. Before you, she was angry but compliant. Now she's... He gestured vaguely. Independent? She was always independent, Mr. Blackwood. She just needed someone to see it. Winston was quiet for a moment. She gave me an ultimatum. If I wanted any relationship with her going forward, I needed to come tonight, to see what she's become. And what do you think of what you've seen? I think, Winston said carefully, that I've been mistaken about many things. He straightened his shoulders. I also think your program deserves corporate sponsorship. Quantum Nexus will be making a substantial donation. No strings attached. Before Dominic could respond, Winston added, not for you, for her, and for others like her who deserve to be heard. With that, he walked away, moving through the crowd toward where Vivian stood with Emilio, the unlikely pair deep in conversation. He's trying, said a voice beside Dominic. Professor Harding had appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. That's more than many fathers do. I suppose, Dominic agreed, accepting a glass. Speaking of trying, Harding continued, the dean was impressed tonight. The tenure-track discussion is moving forward. Thank you for taking a chance on me, Dominic said sincerely. You took the bigger chance, Harding replied, nodding toward Vivienne. Some would say too big. Nothing inappropriate happened, Dominic stated firmly. I know, but connections like that don't just disappear because they're inconvenient. Harding's eyes were kind but serious. She's your student again now. Different context, but same boundary. I understand the rules, Dominic assured him. Good, because you have a bright future here. With a final meaningful look, Harding moved, away to greet other guests. Across the room, Vivienne laughed at something Emilio said, her face luminous with joy. She was no longer the angry girl he'd met in that ostentatious library. She had blossomed into someone stronger, more authentic, someone who had found her voice. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up, their eyes meeting across the crowded space. A smile passed between them, acknowledging the distance, the boundary, the waiting. Later, as the event wound down, Dominic helped his grandfather into the accessible van that would take him home. She is extraordinary, Emilio said, gesturing toward where Vivienne was saying goodbye to her father. The conversation tense but civil, worth waiting for. Abuelo, Dominic chided gently. She's my student. For now, Emilio replied with a knowing smile. But not forever. Time passes. Circumstances change. The heart remains. After seeing his grandfather off, Dominic began helping the staff clean up. Most guests had departed, but a few lingered, including Vivienne, who approached him as he collected empty glasses. Professor Rivera, she said formally, though her eyes danced with the old familiar spark. Thank you for including me tonight. Your performance was the highlight, he replied honestly. You've grown as an artist. I had a good teacher. She glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. My father made you an offer, didn't he? A donation to the program, Dominic confirmed. No strings attached, he claimed. Vivienne smiled, wryly. There are always strings with him, but he's trying, which is something. And you? How are you finding Berkeley? Challenging, exhilarating, exactly where I'm supposed to be. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I have Professor Kim for advanced literary theory. She says you two might co-teach next fall. That's the plan, Dominic nodded. If my tenure application proceeds well, it will, she said confidently. You're too talented to ignore. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words and possibilities. I should go, she said finally. My roommate's waiting. Of course. She took a step back, then paused. Do you remember what you told me that first day? About language shaping reality? I do. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Her eyes met his, clear and direct. About how some stories take time to unfold, how sometimes the most beautiful narratives require patience. Dominic understood her meaning perfectly. The best stories are worth waiting for. She smiled, not the guarded, cynical smile of the girl he'd met months ago, but something genuine and hopeful. I'll see you around campus, Professor. Goodbye, Vivienne, he replied, watching as she walked away, her steps confident and purposeful. Outside, the night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Dominic stood for a moment, contemplating the unexpected turns his life had taken. He had lost a lucrative position, but gained a meaningful career. His grandfather had moved to a simpler facility, but retained his dignity. And Vivienne had found her voice, her purpose, her true self. As for what lay between them, that remained unwritten, a story waiting for its proper time. Some boundaries existed for a reason, and Dominic respected them, but he also believed what he had taught Vivian about language and life, that the most powerful stories were those that defied convention, that found truth in unexpected places. For now, they would each follow their separate paths, growing into the people they were meant to become. And perhaps someday, when the time was right, those paths might converge again. Walking toward his apartment several blocks away, Dominic pulled out his phone to find a text from an unknown number. The best teachers don't just impart knowledge, they awaken possibility. Thank you for awakening mine. Until our next chapter. Dominic smiled, tucking the phone away without responding. Some words didn't need an immediate answer. Some stories were best left open-ended, with the promise of continuation. Above him, the stars continued their ancient, patient dance, each one a distant light, each one part of a greater constellation waiting to be discovered. Just like the countless possibilities that lay ahead waiting to be written, one word at a time.